let's start. In the previous class, we saw k nearest neighbor algorithm last time. Today, we are going to continue from where we left, but I'll just give you a brief idea about what is the first algorithm that we saw, machine learning algorithm. The first algorithm was k nearest neighbor classification algorithm. Classification algorithm. Actually, we wrote the algorithm also last time, but maybe we will revise the algorithm sometime later. Okay, but let me give you a brief idea about what is KNN classification algorithm. First of all, what do you mean by classification? This word, I'll revise that. Imagine we are given a data set in which we have columns C1, C2, C3, C4 up to CD. CD column. D columns are there. D columns. And there is one more column, Y. Now these D columns, have some values below them. So we have many rows in this. This is a data set which contains rows, and C1 might be 1.5, C2 might be 1.8, C1 might be 1.7, 1.9, and so on. And CD, the last column, might be 2.0. And given these values of these D columns, Y, let's say, is 0. Now, what are these? I have taken some arbitrary column C1, C2, C3, C4, CD. In real life situation, this C1 to CD, might be related to weather forecast. This C1 may be humidity level. This C2 might be wind speed. The C3 might be temperature of the ocean bed, that is Arabian Sea. What is the temperature, and many parameters. Okay, and these are the readings we have taken, or rather weather forecasting department has taken these readings. And given these readings of various things about weather, the 0 stands for it will not rain today. 0, no, it won't rain, like that. But given some other readings, let's say we have 2.8, 1.9, then 1.9, then 2.7, and so on 3.0. It's 1 here. That means given these values of the weather, various parameters of the weather, 1 means it will rain. Okay, and many such values are given. This is day-to-day basis. Maybe environmentalist or weather forecasting department has recorded this past experience of the weather, and whether it rains given these values, it rains or not. So maybe 1,000 rows like this are given. And note, given these D values about the weather, it's already recorded whether it rained on that day or not. So this is an authentic information about the weather. I mean, surely it rained on that day. That's why 1 has been written here. Given these parameters about the weather, it rained. It really rained on that day. That's why 1. Okay. Now, imagine that this data set is given, and on one fine day, we are given a completely new values for C1 to CD. Say on one fine day, we record all these values on that day, and it comes out to be, say, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 2.8, 1.9, and so on up to 3.5. But for this, on a particular day, these readings are taken, but we are not told whether it will rain or not. We have to predict whether it will rain or not. Given these values, we have to predict. Now, obviously, if a weather forecasting expert is given this data, then a human can tell that whether it will rain or not. But problem is, we want our machine to predict. That is our program given these values and not given the output, whether it will rain or not. Our machine should predict whether this Y will be 0 or 1. I mean, what exactly will be the output? This is also known as output or label column. Many times this output, you know, which is dependent on these values is known as output or label. This is also known as dependent variable. This y is a variable because it can be 0 or 1, but it is known as dependent variable because whether it will rain or not depends on these values of C1 to CD. Now these C1 to CD columns are known as features, or they're called dimension. So we say we have got d-dimensional data because there are d values in each data. In each data there are d values, or we say we have got d features because there are d columns, or each of these variables are called independent variables. Each of them represent some quantity, like this can be wind speed, this can be humidity, this can be a temperature of the ocean bed, and so on. I'm not an environmentalist. I don't know what are the other parameters that affect the consequence of whether it will rain or not. And at the end of the day, when this data is given, this is finely created data, you see, authentic data. And if our machine is given this data, our machine is given the data set. Let's call this data set as D, capital D. If it is given this data set, then our machine should learn from this data set, that when it rains, when it does not rain. And then once learning is over, our machine should be able to predict what? The output for, this is a very important word I am writing, it should predict the output for unseen data. This is a unseen data. This is completely new data for which the output is not yet known. Yes. So we then don't need an expert environmentalist to tell if these readings are available. Our program will tell whether it will rain, or maybe we have got another data set which predicts whether there will be storm or not, in which situations there is a cyclone and in which situations there isn't a cyclone. So why on day to day, on hour to hour basis also, if we collect the data, we can predict whether it will be a dangerous cyclone or not. This prediction, whether the output belongs to class 0 or class 1, yeah, because output belongs only to two classes, 0 or 1, is known as classification. Making a prediction that whether output or label, you can say, belongs to class 0 or class 1 is called classification problem. Additionally, it is called as binary classification. Why binary? Because in this problem there are only two classes, 0 or 1. Okay, but imagine some time back I discussed iris dataset. Iris dataset has petal length, petal width, sepal length, sepal width, and it has output column species. Correct? In our example, we said output is Y. So output over here was Y, but here the output is named as species. Now, given some petal length, petal width, sepal length, sepal width, these are the features or dimensions or independent variables. This is output or label. We found that label can be iris setosa, or in some other case, it can be iris versicolor, or in some other case, it can be iris virginica. You all know this. We have actually played with this data using pandas module, correct? And there were 150 such rows. This you might have not remembered, but there were 150 rows, and various data of various flowers were given, and the output contains 3 classes. Now you see, if we can call this as 0 class, and this as 1 class, and this as 2, then class 2 label means Virginica, class 1 label means versicolor, class 0 label means setosa. If you can imagine like this. Okay. Now, what if this authentic data is given? This data is made by a botanist who is expert in understanding the species of the flower. And this is an authentic data. What if an unseen data is given? Some new values of petal length to sepal width is given, and we want to predict whether it belongs to 0 class or 1 class or 2 class. Which is the type of flower? Which class this data belongs to? This problem is called classification. Additionally, it is known as multi-class classification, because the output belongs to more than 2 classes. There are 3 classes. Yes, here this problem will be multi-class classification, whereas this problem was 2-class classification. That's why known as binary classification. Okay. Now there are various classification algorithms developed over the years, and the most popular and very simple algorithm is K nearest neighbor. Classification algorithms or methodologies, the most simplest is K nearest neighbor. Then we have logistic regression. This is a classification algorithm, although the word regression is there, but it is classification. Then we have very popular algorithm for classification called SVM, support vector machine, and more, and many more. Now, last time we discussed what is K nearest neighbor. Just to give you an idea, very, very simple algorithm. Just imagine we are given some data set. And for making it easy, we will assume that there are only 2 columns, 2 features, and there is output. And given some values, the output is 0. I am not writing the values. Okay. You can just imagine some values. Let's say output is 0, and such values and their outputs are given. So sometimes output is 0 and sometimes output is 1 for some other values, maybe 2.8, 3.8, output is 1. And this data is given. Okay. Now, why I took only 2 columns? Remember, iris dataset has 4 columns. Or in our example, very first example, I took D columns. While discussing why I am taking 2 columns, because I want to plot these points and see how they look like on the graph. But the problem is, for plotting any points, 2-dimensional plane is very comfortable for us, we human. Maximum we can plot it on 3D also, but 3D, will also be very uncomfortable, because I can't draw 3D on a 2D monitor. So I have taken only 2 dimensions. Just check. Now, these 2 dimensions, and if I call this x-axis as C1 and y-axis as C2, then C1 is 1.5 somewhere here. This might be 1.5, and C2 is 1.4 somewhere here. So this point can be plotted here. See, if I had 4 dimensions, C1, C2, C3, C4, then how can I say C1, then another axis C2? Okay, I can draw third axis also, C3, but where is C4? There is nothing called 4th dimension in our world. But remember, in linear algebra, I explained it thoroughly to you. In linear algebra, there is no limitation. Mathematics can extend itself till any dimension using vector. But for visualization purpose, I have drawn this. Now imagine all these points, all these points which belong to 0 class. Just imagine for some time are plotted in this way. All these blue points which I am drawing, all the blue points, okay, all the blue points, what is the output label they are having? 0. And imagine all the red points I am drawing. Just imagine red points. All the red points are having output label 1. So 2.8, 3.8, 2.8 must be somewhere here. 3.8 must be somewhere here. So this point went here. Maybe the next point might be 2.9, 3.9. So 2.9, 3.9 gave output 1. So 2.9 must be there somewhere here, and 3.9 must be there somewhere on the C2 here. So the point went here, right? Now, if I ask you that given a new query point, let's say, are you understanding this plot that we have done is for the given data set? Yes. Just as I was explaining that this is the given data set. We have not yet spoken about unseen data for which we want to do the prediction. Hello, what I am saying is that this data is given to us and their outputs are also given. So we know everything which lies in this range is 0 points, means for the points for which the output is 0. And all these points which lie in this range, upper points, are having output label 1. Now just imagine some new data point is given. After studying all this, some new data point is given. Let's say the data point is 1.5, 1.8, let's say. And we are asked what should be the output, whether it should be 0 or 1. Remember, we are learning binary classification, whether the output will be 0 or 1. What you would do is take this 1.5 and 1.8. Just check out. I'll just change the color again. Take this 1.5 and 1.8. 1.5 is this. 1.8 will be somewhere here. So the point which we are talking about will be somewhere here. We will call this point as query point. Yeah, because we are asking a question that this point belongs to which class, 0 or 1. Now, anybody would say, come on, this point belongs to class 0. Why? Because it is in that region where all the class 0 points are located, right? You just check all these blue points. This query point comes in the vicinity of these blue points. So it's but obvious. You will say that this point is the point whose class label should be 0. This is your prediction. This is your prediction. But how did you make this prediction? What you do now is, given this new point, query point, you want to know what is its output. Then you just calculate the distance of this point from all the other points. And what you do is you find 3 nearest neighbors. That's k nearest neighbors. Now here I am taking k as 3 nearest neighbors. Actually, you will find distance of this query point from all the points. So you'll find it from this point, then this point, every point, you will find out the distance, correct? And after finding all these distances, you will see who are the 3 nearest points. Which are the 3 nearest points to this? And you will see that this point, and this point are nearest, correct? Now, once you take these 3 nearest points, you will ask, what is their output label? Hello, we don't know the output label of this point. This is our suspense point, query point, but we know output label of these 3 nearest neighbors because these 3 points are from our data set. So what is the output label of this point? This one is 0, blue point it is. Output label of other point is 0. Output label of third point is also 0. Now we take majority vote. Majority vote says that maximum nearest neighbors belong to 0 class. Then your query point is nearest to maximum blue points. So the output of the query point should be 0. I hope you have understood. what exactly is k nearest neighbor. Now just imagine, just for fun, I'm introducing some more points here. Just check. I will introduce some more points. Okay. And okay. So you know all these blue points are 0 class. Red points are 1 class. Now imagine we are given some unseen point, some new point over here. This is our query point. And you are asked which class it belongs to. Whether this point, which is a new point, it belongs to 0 class or 1 class. What would you do? You will find k nearest points. Please try to understand. Take k nearest points to this data point. And imagine this point is nearest. This point is second nearest. And this point is third nearest. Just see, for this point, for this new point, these 3 points are nearest. So you found 3 nearest neighbors. You now check their output labels. And you already know output labels of those points because that was the given data set. So what is the output label of these 3 nearest neighbors? This neighbor, and this neighbor. It is 0 for blue point, 0 for blue point, and 1 for red point. And you take majority vote. Majority vote. And majority vote says among the 3 nearest neighbors, maximum points belong to 0 class. Therefore, our query point has class 0. Okay. I hope you have agreed that in k nearest neighbor, k, whatever you take, here you took k as 3 nearest neighbors, k must be odd. So k must be 3 or 5 or 7 or 9 or 11. See, k cannot be 4 because if you would have taken 4 nearest neighbors for this query point, if you would have taken, check that, if you would have taken 4 nearest neighbors, then the 4th neighbor would have been this. This would be the 4th neighbor. And then we will get 2 0 class points and 2 1 class points. See, 2 points, 2 nearest neighbors belong to 0 and 2 nearest neighbors belong to 1. And then you can't take majority because both are distributed evenly. If you take 3 or 5 or 7 only, then you will get majority between the 2 classes. That's it. This is k nearest neighbor. Very simple algorithm. But the basis of KNN is finding distance, remember. Now this plot and all that, which I explained, we are not going to plot anything. In fact, we cannot plot d-dimensional plane. Then what do you do when a new point is given to you? When a new point is given, you find distance of this point from the first point using Euclidean formula, distance formula. Then you find distance of this point from the second point, distance of this point from the third point, distance of this point from the all points. And then you find k nearest points. So basis of KNN is finding distance of an unseen point from the given points. That is the data points given in the data set, which is a huge process. Just imagine, to declare the class of one unseen point, you have to find out distance of this point from all the points. Come on, otherwise how would you know whose distance is minimum? Which point is nearest? How would you know? You will have to find distance of this point from all the points, isn't it? So that's the basis. Now, this was what we had learned, and we had written the algorithm, and we had actually done time and space complexity. I would suggest you that you see the video if it is uploaded. Maybe it is uploaded, or maybe it will be uploaded in 1 or 2 days. Now, if you have got enough idea about what is KNN doing, KNN classification algorithm, what is it doing? Let's understand some failure cases of KNN. In such cases, which I am explaining, KNN will do very, very poor prediction, or we cannot trust this algorithm. Okay, the first failure case I'm saying is, let's say, imagine that the data given is like this. We are given some blue points. By blue points, I mean that the output label is 0. And imagine we are given some red points. By red points, I mean output label is 1. Okay. And imagine there is a new query point, and the new query point given is over here. This is the point given. And the simple question asked is, to which class does this belong? Oh, hello. If you are asked that if this is the query point here, which class it belongs, you would have easily said this belongs to 0 class, because the nearest neighbors are maximum belonging to 0 class. If you are given a point somewhere here, you would easily say that if there is a point here, this is the query point, then it belongs to 1 class. But there is a point which is very far away from both class points. Now you are in trouble, isn't it? For this query point, you are in trouble. Rather, KNN is in trouble. What KNN does? It will simply find K nearest neighbors. Imagine that we take K as 3. Then maybe this neighbor is first nearest, this neighbor is second nearest, and this neighbor is third nearest. Then we take output of these 3 neighbors. We know their output is of blue point is 0, output of both red points is 1 1, and we take majority vote, and majority vote is 1. So we say query point belongs to class 1. But okay, you have made a prediction that query point belongs to class 1, but is this authentic? Can you believe in this? At least I don't believe. Just because these 2 points, these 2 red points are the majority, they win. That's why we have declared that it is class 1. But this point, the query point, does not appear belonging to any of the class. How can you trust this decision? I hope you are understanding. Such points, are called outliers. You know what many times happens, that the data given is authentic, I said, but many times, due to maybe operator's mistake, due to maybe equipment mistake, which is measuring this quantity, maybe due to some noise, this value might be something like 100.6. Now this doesn't seem meaningful, because all the values of C1 are in the range like 1.5, 2.8, maybe this is 2.9. Suddenly this is 100.6. Maybe actually this was, say, has to be, say, 2.6, but it was operator's mistake, or maybe some noise, or maybe equipment fault. Now this one bad value is going to spoil the position of the point in our geometry, isn't it? And it will become outlier. So first failure case is the outlier points. The outliers are not suitable, you can say, suitable for KNN, because they will simply make KNN fail, and you can't trust this particular prediction that this query point belongs to class 1. This is the first failure. Now the second failure, where KNN cannot be trusted, okay, is that if you have the data set given has random arranged points. I don't know, I'll improve this statement very soon. I don't know whether I'm making a correct English statement so that it describes what I want to say, but it contains randomly arranged points. Now you can see in all the previous cases, how neatly I arranged positive points from negative points, how neatly it was arranged. So then we said anything in this region is class 1, and anything in this region is class 0. But is it always that the data given will be so neat like this? that 0 class and 1 class are neatly separated. Imagine that data given is like this. All these blue points, all these blue points are 0 class. These are 0 class. And all these red points belong to 1 class. That means the data is so jagged, so random. The data is so random that many times if C1 is 1.5 and C2 is 1.5, then output is 0. But if C1 is very near to this, say 1.6, and C2 is 1.5, output is 1. You may ask why this is so. If it is 1.5, 1.50, and if such a small difference, then output is 1. You can't say what happens in real life. In actual situation, when you collect the data, then it might be that this is correct, this is correct. In these situations, the output is 1. You might get such a data where for very close values, the output is totally different. Then you get some jagged positive, that is 0 class and 1 class. Now, what if we are given a query point somewhere over, let's say, over here? This is the query point. And we use KNN, and K we use is 3 nearest neighbors. Now for this query point, nearest neighbor, it appears is this, the second neighbor is this, and third neighbor is this. But then what are their output labels? All red points are having output label 1 and blue point is having output label 0. Then majority class is 1. Then we will say that our new query point belongs to 1, output label 1. But can you trust this? Just check. I'll just draw this again. Can you trust it? This point, the new query point, which I was talking about, this query point is so near to blue and red points. You see, it is surrounded by many blue and red points. And just because you took 3 nearest neighbors and 2 out of them came as class 1 and 1 out of them came as class 0, you are declaring that the query point belongs to class 1. Forget about KNN. I ask you that given this point, what will you classify it as? Red or blue? You will say, I'm not sure. Whereas if I give you a query point over here, in this case, you will say definitely it is red point because it is nearer to many red points. And if I give you some query point here, you will say that it is definitely a blue point because it is closer to blue point. But this is so jagged that you can't really make a prediction, or you can make a prediction, but you can't trust that prediction. So these are the two major cases where KNN fails. These are the failure cases. Okay. Now there is one more very interesting case where KNN may fail. If the data set given is imbalanced. Now, first of all, let's understand what do you mean by imbalanced data set. Okay. For this, imagine data set is D. Data set is D. And this data set has, let's say, C1, C2, C3 up to CD columns. And there is output label Y. Okay. And there are only 2 classes, 0 or 1. So output can be either 0 or 1. Just imagine this data set is having 100 rows. And out of this 100 rows, 90 rows are having output Y equal to 1. And only 10 rows are having output Y equal to 0. So very few times you will see that the output is 0, because 90 times output is 1. Very few times you will see some of the points are having output label 0. What if given 100 rows, 50 rows, perfect 50 rows had output equal to 1, and another 50 rows had output equal to 0? Then this is perfectly balanced data set. What if out of 100 rows, say 60 rows have output label 1 and another 40 rows are having output label 0? Then this is almost balanced. Accepted. This also is accepted. Correct? But 90 versus 10, only 10% of rows belong to output Y and 90% of the rows belong to output 1. Then this is very severely imbalanced data set. Okay. Now, so what happens if the data set is imbalanced? Let's see. Imagine these blue points. These blue points are class 0. These are class 0 points. And red points are class 1 points. Now, you please try to understand, red points, that is class 1 points, are a lot as compared to blue points. So actually, you know, if we imagine that these are the class 1 points. Now, given any query point, let's say the query point is over here. Okay, the query point is over here, or I'll take it nearer. Let's say the query point is over here. Just imagine. Okay, and we are using phi nearest neighbor. That is k is phi. Then we will find phi of the nearest neighbor, and you will agree there are more and more chances that the nearest neighbor will be from one class, because they are lot in number. I hope you are understanding. One of the nearest neighbor is this, another will be this will catch on, this will catch on, this will catch on. 5 neighbors, and 2 out of them belong to 0 class and maximum belong to 1 class. And this will regularly happen. I am not saying that this will always happen, because if the query point was given over here, then the 5 nearest neighbors will be perfect blue. But this might happen maximum times, where because the red points are so many in number, you know, so many in number as compared to blue points, when we are finding the neighbors, maximum neighbors will be red points. Maximum neighbors will be red point. But what do you say on looking at this point? This looks very close to these blue points, right? Yeah, really, this is very close to blue point then compared to red points. But red points were so many in number that they defeated. That means the majority class. Who is the majority class here? 1 class. They occur in majority. Majority class always, or most of the times will defeat the minority class. And we will do wrong classification. I hope this third point is also understood, but there are ways of dealing with this. Actually, if we have got imbalanced data set, you know, like this, 90 of belong to class 1, 10 belong to class 0, then we can easily convert this imbalanced data set into balanced data set. So this is not a big deal actually. You can't call it perfectly as a failure case of KNN, because we can improve this data set. But there is no remedy on outliers. See, outliers are very bad. And given, where is that page? Let me check. Yeah, I think this. I was explaining that if we have an outlier, then it will be misclassified. We can't trust this. Okay. So after learning failure cases of KNN, remember, KNN will fail to classify properly if the query point is outlier. It will fail if the distribution of the points is not such that class 1 and class 0 points are very well separated, but they are in the jagged form like this, zigzag. That means +1 points and 0 points are mixed. Then the classification will be mostly wrong. Most of the times it will be wrong. Now, once you have learned this, now the second thing is, the most important thing is, for those who are waiting for the Python code. I mean, how do you write program in Python for KNN? Trust me, we will see Python code, but we are not in a hurry to write Python code for k nearest neighbor, because Python code for k nearest neighbor will be hardly 3 lines. Just I'll show you. You won't understand what's mostly written here, but actually, you know, whatever work has been done here, see this much work starting from here till here is not the part of KNN. This is a common task which is done for any machine learning algorithm. Just check my words, any machine learning algorithm, whether it is KNN or later whether it is logistic regression, or it is SVM or any such thing. This will be common. You can simply copy paste this. If you are changing this code from KNN to logistic regression, then you can simply, this part up to this will remain common. But what will change? I was saying this portion, you know, will be always the same. What will change is line 1 and line 2. That's all. Only 2 lines will change. Believe me, in logistic regression, instead of k neighbors, that word we have written, instead of this, we will write logistic regression. That's all. In the case of SVM, instead of this word, we will write SVM. That's it. In fact, even this line won't change. I'm so sorry. Only this line, one line will change. So actually KNN program or algorithm can be implemented in Python using single line. And of course, later you have one more line, agreed, you have one more line, just check, which is predict. So actually this fit, you know, is for training or learning. This is the learning phase. And predict is the prediction phase on the query points. Okay, simple. These are the lines. And trust me, the entire algorithm, you know, is actually implemented by these lines. So everything is given ready-made to us. So we are not actually eager, you know, to see Python code. We can see that on any day. It won't be adventurous at all. But the point is that while seeing this code, you can see that k neighbors and then in bracket classifiers in bracket n neighbors equal to 3 has been given. Now you can understand this only if you know what is this neighbor. So what we are saying is that in our program, given a query point, we will find 3 nearest neighbors. And then among those 3 nearest neighbors, majority class will be taken. I can easily play with this. I can make this 5 or I can make this 7 and check the performance. Now these things can be understood. What is this n neighbors? Only if you see theory about KNN. Okay, fine. So where were we? Now, once we have seen this, what are failure cases? Now let's come to a big challenge. I can't say challenge, big task in k nearest neighbor. You know what is the biggest work? Finding distance. Come again. If these are 0 points and these are 1 points, that is output is 1. Okay, and we are given some query point over here. Which class it belongs to, we are asked. Okay, then what do you do? How do you predict which class it belongs? What you do is you literally find distance of this point from every other point. From all the points you find distance. Not only this, from all the points. Correct? I'm not drawing so many lines, but you understand that if if there are n points given, n data points. N data points. Do you understand? N data points means n rows in that data set. N data points. If there are n data points, then given a query point, given an unseen point, given a query point, we have to find distance of the query point to all n points. That means we'll get D1, D2, D3 up to Dn. What do you say? This D1 is distance. This D1 is distance of the first data point up to query point. This D2 is distance of second data point up to query point. And there are n data points, so there are n distances. And then once you find these distances, just check. Once you find these distances, then what you should do is that you should find out smallest among that. Maybe you are going for 5 nearest neighbors, then you should see 5 smallest distances. That is, you should find 5 nearest neighbors. But the point is, the biggest thing in k nearest neighbor is finding distance. I hope you are understanding. So how do you find distance? How to find distance between 2 points, right? We already have learned this. We use Euclidean distance formula. Please try to understand, if there are 2 points in xy plane, let's say this is C1, C2 features, and we have a point here, we have a point here. We want to find out distance between these 2 points. Let this be A1, A2, that is values. Maybe it is 2, 2, 2, 2. This is B1, B2. This is another point. And we want to find distance between these 2 points. So we saw a formula which was distance D is given as square root of A1 minus B1 the whole square plus A2 minus B2 the whole square. Simple Euclidean formula which comes from Euclidean geometry. Correct? A1, this first component A1 minus B1, first component, the squared, added with second component A2 minus second component B2 squared and the whole square root, right? But this was for 2D, 2 dimension, because we had only 2 axes. Correct? What if we have n dimension? Let's say we are given 2 data points. 2 points are given. Both are n dimensional points. So imagine we are given a point P, and P looks like this. This is first value, second value, third value. This is dth value. Please try to understand, this point which I am marking is nothing but A1, A2, 2-dimensional point. This point that I am marking is nothing but B1, B2, 2-dimensional point. What about higher dimension? Higher dimension will definitely contain A1, A2, A3 up to AD. It's a d-dimensional point, and given another point Q, which is also a d-dimensional point, which will contain d such values, maybe B1, B2, B3. Imagine some values here up to BD. We want to find out distance between P and Q. I told when I took a class about linear algebra, I told the classic thing about linear algebra, is whatever applies to 2D applies easily to higher dimension. So what will be the distance between P and Q? Euclidean distance between P and Q will be square root of, right, A1 minus B1 the whole square plus A2 minus B2 the whole square plus, sorry, B2, A3 minus b3 the whole square plus goes on up to an minus bn the whole square. That is first component a1 subtracted with second component b1 the squared, second component subtracted squared, last component subtracted squared, and the square root of the whole summation, which is exactly same as what we have written in 2 dimension. Correct? So now do you understand? If I repeat our discussion of data set, suppose there are d columns. Just imagine we have got 10 columns like this. So we will have some 10 values over here, and there is an output column which can be 0 or 1. Correct? And there are many such rows. That means many such points for which the output label is given. Imagine this data set is given, and now we are given a query point with all these values. These d values are given. Some values you can imagine are given. You want to predict the point, the output. What you would do then? You will find distance of this point from each point, isn't it? Distance of this point from each point. So you will get d1, d2, d3, d4, all distances. Okay. Just for some time, imagine these values are 1.5, 1.6, 1.8, and 2.7. And these values, imagine, are 1.6, 1.6, 1.9, and say 2.8. Then what will be distance of this point from this first point? It will be square root of 1.6 minus 1.5 the whole square plus, I hope you are understanding, 1.6 first component minus first component here squared plus 1.6 minus 1.6 the whole square. This 1.6 minus 1.6 plus 1.9 minus 1.8 the whole square. This goes on up to 2.8 minus 2.7 the whole square. And the whole square root. This will be d1. This will be the distance between the query point and the first point. Now you will have to repeat this formula for d2, correct? d2 will be, if this point is, let's say 1.6, then 1.6 minus 1.6 the whole square plus 1.6 minus maybe 1.8 the whole square, and so on. That will give you d2. I hope you have understood what is Euclidean distance formula and how distances are found in KNN. That's the most important work in K nearest neighbor. Now you will be surprised to know that there are various ways, various methods to find distance between 2 points. I hope you have not forgot that points are nothing but vectors. Whatever you say, point or vector. Our last page, I think, where second last, I think, yeah. See, this point P is A1, A2, A3 up to AD. This is a d-dimensional vector. D-dimensional vector or d-dimensional point. Q is a d-dimensional vector. Very well, it is a vector, isn't it? It's a column vector. Even this A1, A2 is a 2-dimensional vector. So whether you call 2-dimensional point or 2-dimensional vector, it's one and the same. In fact, point is a vector or vector is a point. By the way, when we say we are finding distance between 2 points, then we are finding distance between 2 vectors. Okay, the first vector is this, second vector is this. So we are finding this distance between the 2 vectors. Okay. So there are various methods to find distance between 2 points or vectors. The first method we already found is Euclidean distance method. For our reference, we'll write it again. Let P be, let's say P is A1, A2 up to A, D. D-dimensional vector, and Q is, let's say, B1, B2 up to BD. It's also a D-dimensional vector. Then distance between P and Q is given as D is square root of A1 minus B1 the whole square plus A2 minus B2 the whole square up to AN minus BN the whole square, which can be written in a concise way like this. This is summation of I is equal to 1 to N AI minus BI the whole square. Right? I hope you understand. Now, the second way of finding distance is called Manhattan distance. Manhattan distance. Okay. Now, to understand Manhattan distance, let's use 2D geometry again. Let's say that we have got first feature C1, second feature C2, and we have got a point like this. This is 1. We have got 1. So this is a point here. 1, 1. This point is 1, 1. And another point we have got here. This is 3 and 3, C2. So the another point is somewhere over here. In between we have 2, 2. These are the 2 points. Remember, this point is 1, 1, and this point is 3, 3. Now the question is, what is the distance between these 2 points? Okay, what is the distance? Now, what Manhattan distance is that from this 1, 1, you reach this 3, 3 using unit steps. That let's call this point as P and let's call this point as Q. You want to find distance between P and Q? Then you travel from P to Q using unit steps. By unit steps, you mean steps of size 1, either horizontally or vertically. Unit steps should be horizontal or vertical. So let's take steps of size 1. See, first step from P I'm taking is exactly of size 1. Check that I have gone from 1 to 2. This is a horizontal step. This is of size 1. Second step I take again is a horizontal step of size 1. From 2 to 3 I have gone, step size 1. Now I want to go to Q. I will use again a step size 1. See, I'm at 2 now, from 1 to 2. And I will take again a baby step from 2 to 3. Okay, from 2 to 3. So how many such unit steps I have taken? 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we say distance, Hamming distance between vector P or point P and vector Q or point Q is 4. Of course, distance will be a one single value, isn't it? It will be a scalar. Just check this again. Somebody might argue why you have taken these steps in this direction only. Okay, there isn't any problem. What you do is you want to go from P to Q, isn't it? So first step you take is vertical step. You have gone from 1 to 2. Then you go from 1 to 3. Every time you are taking unit step. So just now you have taken 2 steps. Then you go from this 3, from this point up to 2. Bit disorientation I had, but see, you are at this x equal to 2 and then you reach x equal to 3. How many steps you have taken again? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you can't take diagonal steps. You have to either take horizontal or vertical. Otherwise, somebody says, why don't you take this diagonal like this and then this diagonal? No, Manhattan distance is found only by taking unit steps in either horizontal or vertical direction. Okay. So this is another way of representing the distance. Now you watch. You just check that distance between any 2 vectors, n-dimensional vectors, distance between. Okay, let's take this example itself. Let's take this example, then let's go to n dimension. Let's talk about 2D. Okay, what is P? P is 1, 1. Look, I have written it in a vector form, column vector, 1, 1, and Q is 3, 3. And we want to find Manhattan distance between P and Q. Then the formula for the distance, Manhattan formula, is nothing but it is just take first component of this P and first component of Q and subtract them. Okay, that is 1 minus 3. Subtract. But whatever is the result of subtraction, you just find absolute value of that. You know absolute value. Absolute value will be always giving a positive or unsigned result. So actually 1 minus 3 is minus 2, but absolute value of minus 2 is plus 2. Okay, then add this to subtraction of second component with second component. So it will be again 1 minus 3, but absolute value. So this first absolute value is 2, second is 2, that's 4, and really the distance was 4. Okay, now I'm generalizing it. If P was A1, A2, remember it is 2D, two-dimensional, and Q was, let's say, B1, B2. Sorry, B1, B2, it's a vector. Then what is the distance? Distance is first component minus second component. That is A1 minus B1, correct? But absolute value added with second component minus second component. That is A2 minus B2, but absolute value. Are you finding any similarity of Manhattan distance with Euclidean distance? You'll say, no, sir, absolutely not. We are not finding any similarity. Yes, you can find one similarity. If you wanted to find Euclidean distance between A1, A2 and B1, B2, let me write it again. A1, A2 and B1, B2. What was the formula? Distance was square root of, just check, first component minus second component. A1 minus B1. Hello, we are still doing A1 minus B1 here, but we were squaring this. In Euclidean formula, we were squaring this, and here we are finding absolute value. Just check, A2 minus B2. This is added with, here also addition, you just check. It is added with A2 minus B2. But here we are finding absolute value in Manhattan distance. Here we are squaring it. And the height is, beyond doing this, we are finding square root of this entire thing. Here we are just summing up the absolute values. But most important thing is that the same components, are getting subtracted in both. Just to get satisfied with this, let's say this is C1 and C2, and we have got a point. Just say this is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and here we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have got a point 1, 1 here. This is P. P is 1, 1, and Q, let's say, is let's say 3, 4. It's here 3, 4. Q is 3, 4. Then Manhattan distance will be 1 minus 3 absolute value, 1 minus 3 absolute value, plus 1 minus 4 absolute value. So that's going to be 2 plus 3, which is 5. That means to reach from P to Q, you go anywhere vertically or horizontally, you will be taking 5 steps. Maybe we can check this. First step up to 2, second step up to 3. This point is under 3 here. 2 steps. Then third step from 1 to 2, fourth step from 2 to 3, then from 3 to 4. So you have taken exactly 5 steps from P to Q. Okay. Now you would definitely ask, which formula shall we use? Shall we use Manhattan or shall we use Euclidean in our KNN? The choice is yours. After all, you are finding distance. You will also agree that Manhattan distance between P and Q, 1, 1, 3, 4 came out as 5. If you literally find what is this is D Manhattan. What is D Euclid? For the same example, it will be 1 minus 3 the whole square plus 1 minus 4 the whole square, which will be 2 square, that is 4, plus 3 square, which is 9, which will be square root of 13. And square root of 13 is no way near 5. No way near 5. Isn't it? You will agree. Square root of 13 is what? I mean, square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 16 is 4. So square root of 13 will be between 3 and 4. It will be no way near to 5. So when you calculate distance in Manhattan and distance in Euclidean, both represent different scalar values. But important thing is that what if you are finding distance between 1, 1, 1, 1, and let's say 4, 5. You found distance between 1, 1 and 3, 4. Now, what if you find distance between 1, 1 and 4, 5? You will see Manhattan distance will increase because these are farther points. Hello, you will have to take more steps over here. So this value will increase, and you will also agree that for these points 1, 1, 4, 5, Euclidean distance will also increase. Important thing is, in some way, we want to know whether the point lies in the vicinity or whether it is far. So who cares what this value is? That's the point. I mean, how you are measuring distance is not important. Whether you use Manhattan or whether you use Euclidean, both represent in their own form, both represent distance. Okay. So yes, in fact, Euclidean distance is this direct diagonal. This is the Euclidean distance. Yeah, correct. Okay. So two methods we saw to find distance. Okay, now I want one more whiteboard. I will erase this. Now, first method of finding distance was Euclidean. Second was Euclidean. Second was Manhattan distance. Now we can generalize this and say there is a kind of distance which is Minkowski distance. Now let's see what is Minkowski distance. Okay, given P, which is a two-dimensional. Let's work with only two-dimensional points, and Q is, and later updated, because you know whatever applies to two dimension applies to higher dimensions also. We can just extend the formula. Let's say Q is B1, B2. Then distance between P and Q, let's call it as Minkowski, given by the formula. The formula looks like this. Let's check. The formula will be summation of I is equal to 1 to n. Here n is 2. Here n is 2 because P is two-dimensional vector, Q is two-dimensional. So it is 1 to 2 in fact. This n is 2. Okay. Then AI minus BI absolute value. Okay. Absolute value of this raised to P. I'll tell you what P is. The whole thing raised to 1 by P. Think over this. Just check the formula. If I tell you that this formula is formula for Euclidean distance, if you keep the value of P as 2, in the formula, keep the value of P as 2, then you will get Euclidean formula. If I tell that in this formula, you keep the value of P as 1, you will get Manhattan formula. Think over this. So what if I keep value of P as 1, then distance becomes summation of I is equal to 1 to n, absolute value AI minus BI raised to 1, because P is 1. So why to write it raised to 1? The whole thing raised to 1 by 1, that's raised to 1. But this is nothing but Manhattan formula, Manhattan distance. Take absolute value of subtraction and simply add those absolute value of the differences you have to add. And what if I keep value of P equal to 2? Then the distance will become summation of I is equal to 1 to n. Just check this one I am writing. absolute value of AI minus BI raised to 2, because P is 2. So that is squaring, isn't it? AI minus BI, the whole square. But this whole thing raised to 1 by 2, because P is 2. But 1 by 2 means square root. You know, anything raised to 1 by 2 is square root. So this is Euclidean formula. Now, why even we are discussing? You will say, sir, what magic you are teaching us? I mean, what have you achieved by learning this Minkowski formula? This is just a generalization. If you put P as 1, you will get Manhattan. P as 2, you will get Euclidean. But the point is, what the formula Minkowski says is that when you are implementing KNN and when you want to find out the distance, then you take P of your choice. That means if you take P as 3, then it will be some other kind of distance. It will be neither Manhattan nor Euclidean. Don't ask me what distance it will be, but it will represent some value. And for the nearer points, that value will be smaller. For the farther points, that value will be larger, because it is after all a distance. Who has stopped you? Keep P as 6, 7, anything. We don't do that. But actually, you know, generalization of the formula tells us that distance is not limited to only square root in Euclidean or absolute value. You create your own distance measures, your own way of measuring distance by deciding P. I hope you understood all three ways in which we can find out distance between 2 points. Actually, this is not a way. This is just the generalization, and P decides which method are you using. Okay. Now, what if I tell you that there are more ways of finding distances between the 2 points? So I'll just remove this page. See, to find out distance between two vectors, distance between two vectors, that is points. Vectors and points are same, isn't it? If we are finding distance between two vectors, there is one more way called cosine distance. Completely different from Minkowski family. I'll say Minkowski family because P decides whether it is Manhattan or Euclidean. Cosine distance is completely different. What it says, let's work with 2D again. That's the only thing we can see. Suppose C1 and C2 are the two axes, and there is a point P, there is a point Q. Okay, let's say these are the 2 points. P is A1, A2, and Q is B1, B2, some points. Now we want to know distance between these 2 points, correct? P and Q, right? Now think of this. This P is after all a vector and Q is after all a vector, and we have origin over here. Now this P and Q are making an angle theta. Okay. By the way, I repeat our aim. Our aim is to find out distance between these two vectors. That is these 2 points. What is D? Distance between these 2 points. But these 2 vectors are making an angle theta. Okay. Then cosine distance. I'm defining the cosine distance between P and Q is given as 1 minus cos theta. 1 minus cos theta. Let's say this theta is 30 degrees. Then 1 minus cos of 30 is going to be the distance. Please don't think of really 1 minus cos 30. Is this point so small? Is this distance so small? Hello, I proved it that you can represent distance in many versions, correct or not? First of all, if this theta is 30 degrees, then cos theta, cos 30 will be a very small value, and 1 minus that small value will be a very small value. This value might come as 0.56 something. I'm not sure. I'm not finding it. But we are claiming the distance between P and Q is simply 0.56. But you tell me, so intuitive it is. It is so easy. If there was a point here, imagine this point was M. Okay, and this was C1, C2. And somebody asks you, what is distance between P and M, these 2 points? We found distance between P and Q, correct? Now, what is distance between P and M? Then this is the vector M and this is the angle made. Let's call this as theta. I'll just remove a few things. Now, this is the angle theta, isn't it? This one. So what is distance between P and M? It is cosine distance between P and M is 1 minus cos theta. That means 1 minus cos of 60 degrees. Oh, I think I extended this theta down there. This theta should be only between this. Okay. Fine. Now you can see that this distance between P and M will come out to be larger. Let's see. Imagine this theta is 60 degrees and this theta between P and Q is 30 degrees. By the way, for your information, cos of 30 degrees is greater than cos of 60 degrees. You recall cos 0 is 1. And here we have pi by 2, that is 90 degrees. It drops to 0 here. So from cos 0 to cos 90, the cos is dropping. So if 30 degrees is somewhere here and 60 degrees is somewhere here, you will see cos 30, this is cos 30 is obviously higher than cos 60. Correct? Because this is the cosine graph. So you tell me distance between P and Q is 1 minus cos 30 degrees and distance between P and M is 1 minus cos 60 degrees. No need of finding it, but you tell me cos 30 is very large as compared to cos 60. Why don't we find it? Okay, let's use Google and let's find it. So I'll just write 1 minus cos, let's say 30. Let's first of all find whether it works. Cos 0, no, cos 90. Cos 90 should come out as 0. No, it's not. So it should be in the radians, I think. It should be in the radians. So I should give 90 multiplied by 3.14 upon 180. It should not be in degrees. It should be in radians, it seems. Yeah, it close to 0. So this is 90 into pi by 180. So this is in radians. Okay. So I want to find out cos 30. So it should be cos 30 multiplied by 3.14 upon 180. Correct? This is 0.86. So cos 30 has come out as 0.86. So this is going to be 1 minus 0.86. Okay, but what about cos 60? If I see this is 60 degrees multiplied by pi by 180, then this is 0.5. So if you just watch this, this is 1 minus 0.5. This will be 0.5. The distance between P and M, you watch, distance between P and M is 0.5, whereas distance between P and Q will be what? 0.24. Correct? 24. And that has to be because P and Q are closer as compared to P and M. So cosine distance is working for farther points, distance is larger. For closer points, distance is smaller. I mean, what do you want? You want to check who is the nearest neighbor. Tell me, isn't it? Somehow, you know, by some method, you want to measure the distance. And for the closer points, the distance should be lesser. And for the farther points, distance should be larger. And it is working. The only thing over here, you know, is that suppose we have got two-dimensional again, C1 and C2. And there is a point P here, and there is a point Q here. And they are collinear. By collinear, what I mean is, this is the origin. So you can see that the P vector is this, and on the same linear line, Q also occurs. And we are asked, what is distance between P and Q? Now, what is the angle between them? Angle between them is 0. Correct? The angle between P and Q is 0. Then cosine distance between P and Q will be 1 minus cos 0. And you all know that cos 0 is 1. Cos 0 is 1. So the distance will be 0 if the points are collinear. So this Q might be lying anywhere, here or here, or maybe this is Q. They're so far, but still, as cos 0 is 1, the distance will be always 0. But this can be easily trapped. I mean, if cosine distance of the 2 points come out to be 0, then your algorithm can be taught that the points are collinear, and some remedial steps can be taken, because then this won't be an authentic distance between the 2 collinear points. Okay, I hope this is a completely different way of finding distance, isn't it? And you will see that it completely depends on the angle made by the 2 vectors at the origin. So do you really understand that if we talk about again 2D, C1 and C2? Okay, just imagine we have got a point here. This is, let's say, P. Okay, and we have got another point that is vector, over here, Q. And we are asked, what is the distance between P and Q? So what will be the distance here? 0, isn't it? Because angle between them is 0. So cos theta is 1. So here the distance will be 0. Okay, but what if the same point, this Q, was over here? And we are asked, what is distance between P and Q? Now just see, I have moved this Q over here. P is still there on C1. What is the distance between P and Q? Now the angle made by them is 90 degrees. Angle between P and Q is 90. And you know cos 90 is 0. Then 1 minus cos 90 is 1 minus 0, which will be 1. So here in this case, distance between P and Q will be 1. Okay. Now what if I move this Q over here? Now what is the distance between P and Q? You will agree that Q is going farther and farther from P. You will agree that this distance between P and Q is much lesser than this distance. It has gone farther. Now the angle made is 180 degrees. So distance between P and Q will be 1 minus cos of 180. And cos of 180 is minus 1. Cos of 180 is minus 1. So this will be 1 minus of minus 1, which will be 2. And definitely, if Q is over here, then distance should be larger than as compared to Q is over here. Now, what if I move that Q over here? Now, the angle made between P and Q is 270 degrees. Please try to understand, 270 degrees. Right? Correct? And cos of 270 degrees is again 0. Cos of 270 is 0. So this distance now will be 1 minus cos of 270, which will be 1 minus 0, which will be 1. And you will agree that if Q is here or Q is here, they are, by cosine distance, they are at 1. And what if Q returns back over here? Then angle made is 0. Then 1 minus cos 0. Cos 0 is 1. Then distance will be 0. So what is the maximum value of a cosine distance? Correct. It can be 2. It can't be more than 2. Correct. I'm talking about 2 dimension. A minimum value can be 0. Okay. So very interesting way, that how you want to find out the distance. Now, I was exploring the code here, and I said, when you actually start K neighbor classifier, then you tell how many neighbors are we going to check, nearest neighbors. And suppose you don't want to use Euclidean method to find distance, then there is a parameter over here which you can just write comma and the way in which you want to find out the distance. So you can literally say, I want to use Manhattan formula, or I want to use cosine similarity, cosine distance formula. And there is list of such parameters. And you will agree that there is no sense in learning the code unless you don't know that what are those parameters. And from each and every theoretical concept that we learn, we will easily understand. Once we reach the code, we will easily understand why we are writing that parameter. And anyway, I told you, then it is just a matter of one line in Python code. Okay, I hope you found all this discussion very interesting. And for more such interesting sessions, we will meet. Okay, but that's all for now. And see you then. Yeah, bye.